Hola, good morning everyone, Vignetting here, welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking at another autofocus lens from TTArtisan. It is the TTArtisan 56mm f1.8. This is an APS-C autofocus lens for Nikon Z, Sony E and Fuji X Mark. The sample I received from TTArtisan is for the Fuji X Mark and I'm testing it on my 40 megapixel Fuji X-H2. But the image quality should be the same for all the different versions as they all have the same optical design with 10 elements in 9 groups and 9 aperture brace. I'm not too sure if it's because I've complained about TTArtisan's lens flare performance too many times in the past, so this time TTArtisan they have specifically told me that they have made some good improvement to the lens flare performance with this new 56mm lens. So let's find out if it's true and how's the overall performance of this lens. In this review, I'm also going to do some comparisons with the Viltrox 56mm f1.4 and the Sirui Sniper 56mm f1.2 as these are two other third-party autofocus lenses of the same focal length, so I'm sure some of you would be considering these two lenses as well if you are looking at buying a 56mm lens for your APS-C camera. The Viltrox and the Sirui have a faster maximum aperture, but at the same time, these two lenses are over US $300, while the TTArtisan is only $158. So if the TTArtisan can keep up with these two lenses, then it could be a very good value for money choice if you don't need the fastest maximum aperture. This new TTArtisan 56mm lens has the same understated design as their 35mm f1.8 autofocus lens that I reviewed just a few months ago. Actually, apart from this being slightly taller and the 56mm mark on the lens, this lens is virtually identical to the TTArtisan 35mm autofocus lens. The diameter of this lens is the same as the 35mm lens and it also has the same 52mm front filter thread. Even the lens hood appears to be identical as well. Comparing the size of this TTArtisan lens with the Viltrox and the Sirui, the size does reflect the maximum aperture. The TTArtisan is the smallest of the three, is slightly smaller than the Viltrox, but is significantly smaller than the Sirui. This TTArtisan lens doesn't have any switches or button. The body is made of metal, including the metal lens mount despite this is a budget lens. It feels solid and pretty well made. It doesn't feel cheap at all. The focus ring turns smoothly and very well dampened. There isn't any USB port on the lens. Instead, the lens cap is a USB-C dock, so you can use that to update the firmware. The lens weighs about 240 grams, so it's quite a lightweight lens. Not only is a lot lighter than Fujifilm's 56mm f1.2, it's also lighter than the Viltrox and the Sirui. This TTArtisan lens feels really nice and balanced when I mount it on my X-H2, but it also feels great when I mount it on my smaller Fuji X-T3. For a budget lens, I think the design and build quality of this lens is excellent. No, it's not weatherproof and it doesn't have the aperture ring, but considering the price of this lens, I won't complain about it at all. By the way, this lens also comes with a brand new packaging. The box is quite a bit different to the old TTArtisan design. I'm not too sure if this is going to be the new packaging or it's just a one-off thing, but maybe drop a comment below and let me know if you like this new box design or you prefer the old one, as I'm sure TTArtisan will be reading you guys' comment to get some feedback. With this lens mounted on my Fuji X-H2, the autofocus speed is reasonably fast. I can hear a bit of autofocus noise when I'm shooting in a quiet indoor place, but you shouldn't be able to hear anything when you are shooting outdoor. Autofocus accuracy is good overall, but I do notice if you place the autofocus point near the edge or corner of the frame, then it may have some negative impact to the autofocus accuracy, which, to be fair, happens with a lot of third-party lenses as well, even though I don't mention it in every review. Okay, now let's have a look at the image sharpness. All the test photos in this review were shot in RAW format and then converted to JPEG using Adobe Lightroom. Lens profile correction is applied unless otherwise stated. Let's start with the center image sharpness. At f1.8, the TTArtisan is pretty sharp and contrast is reasonably good. It's slightly sharper than the Sirui, but not as sharp as the Viltrox. TTArtisan renders the black text and graphics without much chromatic aberration, while the Sirui shows some noticeable purple fringing. Viltrox also shows a bit of chromatic aberration, but not as strong as the Sirui. Stopping down to f2.8, the TTArtisan is now very sharp, but it's the same for the other two lenses as well. However, if you look at the circle on the left side, you can see the Sirui and the Viltrox both still shows a bit of color fringing, while the TTArtisan doesn't have any color fringing at all. At f4, Viltrox chromatic aberration would disappear, and if we stop down to f5.6, then finally, Sirui also has no more chromatic aberration. Diffraction would start to soften up the image at around f11. Now let's have a look at the corner. At f1.8, the TTArtisan's corner is quite soft. The Sirui is even softer, the Viltrox is better. And as we stop down the lens, the TTArtisan's corner becomes sharper and it reaches the maximum corner sharpness at f8. Comparing the three lenses, Viltrox has the best corner sharpness. With the TTArtisan lens, focus at the corner instead of the center does improve the corner sharpness. This suggests the lens may have a bit of field curvature. The minimum focus distance of this TTArtisan 56mm lens is about 50 cm. And this is a photo that I shot at the minimum focus distance with this lens at the maximum aperture f1.8. The image is pretty sharp, and it does provide a higher maximum magnification ratio than the Viltrox and the Sirui. The photo shot with the TTArtisan lens at the minimum focus distance is also a lot sharper than the other two lenses. Combining this with the higher magnification ratio, that means the TTArtisan lens would be a much better choice if you want to capture some nice detailed close-up photos. However, one interesting thing I noticed with the TTArtisan lens is when I stop down the lens to f2.8, the image doesn't seem to be any sharper. The f2.8 photo is not as sharp as the f1.8 photo. Even the photo shot at f4 is not quite as sharp as the photo shot at f1.8. And usually that means one thing. The lens has a bit of focus shift when we stop down the lens. So I shot another set of test photos, and this time I can see the focus would shift slightly to the back when I stop down the lens. It's not by a huge amount, and I don't really notice it when taking non-close-up photos like taking portrait photos, but for photos I shot at the minimum focus distance, the focus shift is enough to be noticeable, so you have to be a little bit careful when you are shooting photos at the minimum focus distance. With the 56mm focal length and the fast f1.8 maximum aperture, this TTArtisan lens gives you approximately 85mm full-frame equivalent focal length, which is a very popular choice for shooting portrait photos. If you shoot portrait at maximum aperture, you can also get shallow depth of field quite easily and separate your model from the background. The bokeh is pretty smooth. I don't see too much highlight near the edge of the bokeh balls. Foreground bokeh also looks quite nice. When shooting at the maximum aperture, there's quite a bit of cat's eye bokeh. The bokeh balls near the edge of the frame are not exactly round. Some people may not like it, but I think it adds a bit of character to this lens. If you look at this set of comparison photos, all shot at f1.8, We can see the TTArtisan has the most obvious cat's eye effect near the corner. The Viltrox also has a bit of clipping, while the Sirui, probably because it is a f1.2 lens, so at f1.8 the bokeh is most round even at the corner. Now if you love bokeh, one advantage with the Sirui and the Viltrox is that they have larger maximum aperture. So this is the photo shot at the maximum aperture with all these three lenses. Both the Sirui and the Viltrox can melt the background more than the TTArtisan. Okay, next let's have a look at the vignetting performance. With the lens profile correction applied, the TTArtisan has very minimal amount of vignetting at f1.8, but this is the same for the Viltrox and Sirui as well. Because of that, stopping down the lens makes almost no difference to vignetting. It looks pretty much the same even when we stop down all the way to f16. If we disable lens profile correction, now we can see a bit of vignetting with the TTArtisan lens at f1.8. It is not too bad, but it's more than the two other lenses. Largely, I think it's because the other two lenses already stop down a bit when we are shooting at f1.8. Stopping down to f2.8 would noticeably improve TTArtisan's vignetting. By f5.6, there is almost no vignetting anymore. With this TTArtisan lens, chromatic aberration seems to be very well controlled. I don't really see much color fringing in my real-world photos. Even when there is very high contrast and I shoot at the maximum aperture, there's still very minimal amount of chromatic aberration. And if we now look at these local comparison photos, all the three test photos were shot at f1.8. The TTArtisan has the least amount of local. The Sirui has a bit more, but this time it's the Viltrox that has the worst performance. We can see very obvious color fringing in the test photo shot with the Viltrox lens. Now let's have a look at the Coma performance. The TTArtisan has some pretty noticeable Coma at f1.8. It's pretty easy to see in this sample photo. Fortunately, we just need to stop down to f2.8, then the Coma will be much improved. Okay, we'll look at some brick wall test photos now. The TTArtisan doesn't seem to have too much noticeable distortion. Even the horizontal lines at the top and bottom of the frame are very straight. So that's excellent. If you look at the Viltrox and the Sirui, both of these lenses have a small amount of pincushion distortion. So the TTArtisan is the best in this area. Now all these photos that we just saw were with the lens profile correction enabled. But interestingly, when I disable the lens profile correction in Lightroom, it makes no difference to the distortion. Lens flare is usually TTArtisan's weakest area. If you have watched my other TTArtisan review, you probably would have remembered I have complained about the lens flare performance many times. When TTArtisan sent me this lens, they told me that they have spent a lot of effort to improve the lens flare performance of this new 56mm lens, and they asked me to test it out and see what I think. And indeed, this new TTArtisan lens flare performance is much improved compared to their previous lenses. There is a lot less lens flare and ghosting. Contrast usually would not drop too much even when I shoot directly into a bright light source. I still won't say TTArtisan has excellent lens flare control, but the TTArtisan is now good enough and very acceptable in my opinion. It's better than the Sirui as well. So I'm really happy to see TTArtisan has made some pretty big improvements in this area. Okay, I want to talk about Sunstars now. With this TTArtisan lens, I need to stop down the lens quite a bit to around f5.6 to get Sunstars visible in the photo. When I stop down the lens all the way to f16, the 18-point Sunstars look quite nice and sharp. There really isn't too much difference between the Sunstars from all these three 56mm lens. I think I like the Sunstars from the Viltrox lens a little bit more, as it is a little bit sharper and you don't have to stop down the lens as much to get some Sunstars. But overall, the Sunstars are very similar between these three lenses. When shooting video, autofocus is reasonably quiet and the focus transition is smooth. It does have some noticeable focus breathing when I do my usual 1 meter to infinity focus breathing test. Sirui's autofocus speed seems to be quite a bit slower than the other two lenses. Sirui also seems to struggle to do the transition to background smoothly, as it will suddenly jump and hunt a bit at the end of the focus transition. I didn't notice this issue when I previously did the Sirui review, but this time it is really noticeable when I tested with the other two lenses at the same time. To make sure it's not a one-off issue for the Sirui, I have repeated this test a few times and the results were still the same. Every time I review a new lens from TTArtisan, I can see some improvements. This time it is the same. With this 56mm f1.8 lens, the most obvious improvement is the lens flare performance. It is better than the 35mm f1.8 autofocus lens that we looked at on this channel just a few months ago. Image quality is very solid overall for a lens at this price. We can also see TTArtisan has become more confident with their autofocus implementation, as 56mm f1.8 is the most challenging in terms of autofocus performance for TTArtisan so far. But there's still quite a bit of room for improvements. Like I mentioned before, corner autofocus is not perfect, but overall, autofocus is very usable for both taking photos and videos with this TTArtisan lens. Comparing the TTArtisan with the Viltrox and the Sirui 56mm lenses, the Viltrox and the Sirui, they have faster maximum aperture, so these two lenses can be more attractive if you want to shoot under very low light condition or you want that very shallow depth of field look. But in terms of image quality, the TTArtisan is very competitive. There are some pros and cons for each of these lenses, but overall I don't think there is a huge difference between these lenses. The advantage of the TTArtisan is that it's quite a bit smaller and lighter and also significantly cheaper. So who is this TTArtisan lens for? If you are someone who's looking at getting a portrait lens or just a fast, compact, short telephoto lens and you don't want to spend a lot of money, or maybe you are just looking at getting your first prime lens, then this TTArtisan lens could be a really good choice that won't break your bank.